Our climate and our energy systems are on the precipice of chaos. And this, my friends, is a scary proposition. I want to talk to you today about what we can do to turn this scary situation into an opportunity for our people, our businesses, society at large, and yes, even the planet. No more can we consider this an issue for the future. It is a crisis for today. I want to walk you through some of the areas of crisis, the ways that turns out into challenges for our utilities and our stakeholders, and then pull it back to some pathways, principles, and policies that can plow us towards a brighter future. You know, for the first time in human history, we live in a society where we measure carbon dioxide at levels over 400 parts per million. That expresses itself in storms that are more frequent and intense, in insurance rates that are climbing. And for the first time, we now have climate refugees. You know, the Red Cross says today there are more environmental refugees than political refugees fleeing war. By 2050, they suggest we'll have over 50 million such refugees in our world. So what does that call us to do? Either we stand by and do nothing, or we pick where we're going to drive the stake in the ground. And for me, it says, let's drive the stake at 2 degrees Celsius. Now, if we do that, we're going to accept sea rises such as this at 2 degrees Celsius, right? So we got to stop it somewhere. What does it take to accomplish 2 degrees Celsius? We got to start with a budget, a carbon budget. And let me suggest, if you do the math on what kind of carbon budget it takes, we've got to limit our emission of carbon to 2 tons for every man, woman, and child per year on the whole face of the earth. How big a challenge is that? Well, globally, we're at 5 tons. In the EU and China, we're at 7. And here in the United States of America, we emit 17 tons of carbon for every man, woman, and child. We can be depressed by that, or we can all look at each other and say, wow, we've got to be bolder and more creative in the work that we do than anything we've ever imagined in our past. And I'm up for that challenge. We know, however, there are other types of challenges and chaos in our system, and you've heard a lot about the cost basis. For businesses, this expresses itself in price volatility, and we only have to go to the gas pump or look at our natural gas bill or propane or oil bills to see this sort of volatility. And we know that across our region, our state domestic products for energy range between 6% and 12%. So is it any wonder that when a business looks at where to locate a new facility or whether to keep one in your town, that they look at energy price? Now, that would be depressing enough, but the story is even worse for residents. You know, those with the least among us, the low-income residents, have energy burdens that exceed 35% of their total income. That forces these people to make choices that in a modern society we should simply not tolerate as a way to go forward. You know, it forces these people to, in order to pay their energy bills, 24% of LIHEAP recipients go without food, and 37% go without medical or dental care. These are the sort of choices we're forcing on people. Economic chaos indeed. How about technology? You know, these innovations in technology are challenging the very foundation of our industry. They're challenging the assumptions we've had about utilities and all the stakeholder systems of everything we've known. 15 and 20 years ago, who could have seen the impact of smart grid or electric vehicles, microgrids, air source heat pumps, the explosion of distributed generation, and many, many other technologies? Now, I submit these are all great paths forward, and we should embrace them. But what they fundamentally do is they challenge everything we thought we understood and believed in that was the security of the structure and policy that drove our industry. It shakes the world underneath our feet. So that's a lot of chaos to take in, right? How about challenges? You know, I think in the face of this chaos, everybody has a Utility 2.0 or a Utility of the Future initiative going on. And part of it, that's our response to the chaos. It's our response to the historic risk we all find ourselves facing every day. And we can't even characterize it yet because we don't fully understand the risk with climate change. And those are the sorts of challenges we're looking for. What I don't see is people really finding the opportunity that's embedded herein for us all. So I want to offer you a couple of ways that I see this showing up as challenges. We've heard of the billions of dollars that our governors are supporting to invest in natural gas and transmission upgrades. And I would submit to you some of those are prudent investments. In the face of the chaos that we're facing, some of them are not. Now, reasonable people can disagree, and there is no doubting that investment in natural gas pipelines in the short term provides us a positive climate bump. But since I don't believe we'll ever get to a point where we'll give up on those costs and strand them, when we set carbon budgets, the very investments we're making for the short-term gain will actually stop our progress over the long term. That's one such challenge. A second is our industry itself. As a region, we love to stand on stage and say how great a job we're doing with our efficiency programs, and we should, right? I love to talk about what we're doing in Vermont and the great progress we've made. But we're investing today in Vermont, as one example, less than half of the cost of power supply in our efficiency program. So I ask all of you, is there any program in here that's fully living up to its potential? And I think it's hard to come up with the answer of yes on that. Consumers are also incredibly frustrated with this at this point in time. You know, consumers, in my view, really just want to be empowered and engaged. And instead, what we give them, which worked historically, is an electric utility over here to help them there, and a natural gas, and God forbid we talk transportation, and what about distributed generation? These are all massive challenges for our consumers. Let's look at a couple examples of how this plays out. Transportation is the big monolith and beast in the room, and yet it doesn't ever talk historically to any other aspect of our energy system. Electric vehicles can change all that. They are incredibly low carbon, amazingly low price, equivalent of $1 a gallon at the pump. Who wants some more of that? But these big rolling appliances offer more hope than that. What they offer us is the opportunity to shave peak demand, be used, dispatched as a grid resource, and even to help with the deployment of renewable energy. How about home heating as another aspect? With the advent of air source heat pumps, particularly in the northern tier states of our region that are so reliant on oil and propane, there's a tremendously wonderful story to tell here. For these regions, air source heat pumps offer the hope because they change the economic equation. Air source heat pumps run on a third the price of propane, half the cost of home heating oil, and they even are on par or cheaper than natural gas to run, and they blow all three of them away on a carbon basis. That's a great opportunity for our region to take advantage of as we go forward. So a lot of chaos, a lot of challenges. What about the future as we go forward in the world? Let me begin by laying out what I think are three principles that will really blaze a path to a different sort of energy future for us all. The first, I hope you'll agree, is a powerful proposition that energy builds community, society, and local economic vitality. Let me say that again. Energy builds community, society, and local economic vitality. That means we're called to do more than service quality and reliability. They'll always be important and we have to do them. It's not enough. It means when we're serving consumers in the future and meeting the way they want to engage in the energy system, we've got to push beyond that to include all of the chaos issues that we have to solve for. It means, for me, that we have to recognize we have tremendously undervalued the importance of the energy system on building society and what it does. So look, how does that play out for us here? Right? Let me walk through a couple of examples of what our industry coins externalities and non-energy benefits, right? And see if you end up agreeing with me that we've been undervaluing them and that we could do better. So we all know in this room that 80 cents of every dollar we invest in fossil fuels leaves our economy, and 80 cents that we invest in efficiency stays at home. You all counting that totally? ACEEE points out that for every $1 million invested in efficiency, we create 20 high-value jobs, and our industry as a whole, it's only 10. Are you counting that? How about health benefits? You got that? How about pollution benefits beyond just carbon? How about really actualizing the benefits not just to the low-income individual, but what happens in society when we invest in them and those benefits? And the benefits of a more secure country because we're using less fossil fuel and improving educational quality. Look, a clean, green, a new energy economy provides all those benefits and more. We can make a bigger list. And if the silos don't come tumbling down, we won't actualize them. And if we're not willing to lead, but we want to be a follower, we can't actualize them either. As great as all that might sound to you, we will fall short of our promise if those benefits only flow to some of us and not all. If we're to live up to the notion of a civil society and even the grand idea, of the founding of our nation, then the second principle suggests that we have got to create opportunity for all to participate in our energy economy. For me, this is a matter of justice. It's a matter of energy justice. And for me, it speaks to my head and it speaks to my heart. My heart tells me that in the Northeast, no person in 2014 should freeze in their apartment. And it tells me that a single mother should not have to choose between paying the natural gas bill and paying the rent, when our industry is still trying to figure out the doggone split incentive thing. My head tells me this is just common business sense. We all pay for this system that we operate. And yet the system works really well for middle to higher income folks and larger businesses. And one of the things we don't talk a lot about as an industry is it doesn't work so well for small business, sure doesn't work very well for low income, and God forbid if you are in the vacuum between low income assistance programs and market rate programs, because it's not working for you. If we don't deliver service and value across that entire economic continuum, we risk creating opponents out of those who ought to be our industry's staunchest allies. Now, my third principle for us to think about is that we have got to meet consumers where they're at. I said earlier, consumers want to be empowered and engaged. Look, consumers I know are not endlessly fascinated with energy, and yet our industry seems to think that's so. We offer them all kinds of choices, each of little fiscal consequence, and we wonder why they don't engage. Look, the consumers I know have a simple question, they want a simple answer. What are you going to do for me to lower my energy use and to lower my cost? And yeah, maybe we'll save the planet along the way too. So that means, for me, we got to empower them, and that means control. What they really want from our consumer behavior studies is they want a trusted source that can help them pull all the information together, pull the finance, pull the contractor across all the energy uses, and when they make a choice, they make a meaningful, impactful choice that really drives them forward. So with those three principles, I've got a few policy initiatives for us to consider in addition. Lots of policies will come out of those three principles, but 6 more. First, we've got to focus on total energy. That means tear the silos down and think about consumer by consumer total energy use. It changes our mission. It's no longer about use less electricity. It's use all energy efficiently. That's the new job. We've got to dive into this broad infrastructure issue as an energy efficiency industry so we can actualize those savings. And we've got to, in our offerings, include distributed generation so that the cost benefits of the energy efficiency economy can help pay for the market transformation needs of the renewable energy distributed generation process. Second, that pushes us to think about the best energy mix region by region in the country. Now, for me, it's really clear we got to use more electricity in our region because it's the best carbon game we got going. So that means strategic electrification of heating and of transportation going forward, and we ought to embrace that. That'll push us to think about carbon budgets. Now, maybe you like the 2-ton number I threw out before, maybe you don't, but pick your number and try to do the math. If our electric grid is not 100% decarbonized, we can't get there from here. So I think any meaningful carbon budget will force us to seriously look at that. That's going to make us look at carbon again. After all, EPA now says it's a pollutant. So as we look at carbon, we got a great story to tell because we've got RGGI. So we have choices. Either we can drive much harder and quicker to fully actualize and use RGGI to value carbon, or we should be adding some additional carbon pricing mechanisms across our region. Fifth is we have got to drive to this notion of all cost effectiveness in our thinking, in our industry. We got to get there first, and then we've got to knock the door down, and frankly, all cost effective has got to become our floor, not our ceiling. We've got to be investing in efficiency at all cost effective today, and really the true test is adding in what does it take to get to that carbon budget. And that's where we ought to be costing our future of our efficiency programs. Frankly, the 1%, 2%, and 3% per year that we do is a nice down payment. But honestly, if we have a serious conversation of what we need to accomplish with our industry, we're looking at 60 and 70% from today forward of all of our energy to meet the kind of carbon budgets we got to meet have got to come from efficiency. And last, we have got to embrace the difficult and the hard. And by this, I mean if you agree with me that the energy system really does contribute to our society, then we've got to step forward and in one voice advocate for all those non-energy benefits to come into the game, and we've got to push really hard. And when we carry the day, The implementers in the room have got to walk up to the regulators and say, not only do I want you and ask you to add that to my program goals, I want you to make them, hold me accountable to them in the same way that I'm held accountable for energy goals. Now, I need a prop for my last piece, and I see that the time's up, but you know, we've got a choice as I close here. We have a choice of what kind of future we want. And we can have a future where we ignore the chaos, and we're going to need sunglasses because it's going to be really warm and bright in bad ways. Or, in the words of Huey Lewis in the News from the 80s, for those of you old enough, our future can be so bright, we got to wear shades. You know, because as we go forward, we can actually create jobs and push economic development and change the lives of people. I get incredibly excited by this idea of the future. Excited because it turns out the future of energy is actually about the future of our communities. It's about the future of society. It's about the opportunity for each member to actually find a fulfilling opportunity to move forward. That, my friends, is a path worth navigating all these challenges and all the chaos. That is worth fighting for. Thank you very much.